Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing good. Now, today I've got a very extra special guest. I'm joined by Julian. A lot of you might recognize him from AFTV, but he's a big Arsenal fan. And yeah, I can't wait to have him on today. Thank you, Julian, for coming on. How are you doing?
Well, I'm very, very, very happy now that you call me a very extra special guest, whereas everyone else that you've
Yeah,
introduced
you're
has
special.
been a special guest. So the fact that I'm very an extra does does please me. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And yeah, I do appreciate you coming on as well. And I wanted to actually just start off because I always love hearing people's stories about how they became an Arsenal fan. And yeah, I was sort of wanted to know your journey, sort of when you supported Arsenal, like who were your favourite players growing up?
Okay. Well, it probably started somewhere way before you were born, about 1976, when my mother came back. So I'd expressed a bit of an interest in football. I'd been playing in the back garden. She bought me a Wolves top. And when my father inquired why I had a Wolves top, she said, "Well, that was what was on discount at the shop." So I got that. Does it matter what football team? My dad, being a long living Arsenal fan, was a little bit perplexed, but said, "No, fine, whatever top that he likes, you can get him." Um, I wanted a number put on the back of that shirt. So back in those days, you used to iron the numbers on the shirt. Obviously, sort of at that age, I think I was about 6 years old. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere near the iron. So my mother went to iron the number on the back of the shirt, and at the same time got a ring at the doorbell. She went to answer the doorbell. When she came back, she realised she'd left the iron on the shirt, and it burnt a burnt hole through the shirt. So that was the end of me supporting Wolves. At which point, my father decided that he would take me to Arsenal, which was far more appropriate since it wasn't too far from where we lived. And my first experience being taken to Arsenal, he took me, I think it was an Arsenal Liverpool game back in late '76. And when we got there, he's very risk averse, my father. And we went via a route that I think we got a bus to Manor House, somewhere around there, and then walked from there because we didn't want to get out too near the stadium because it would be too busy. So we went to the stadium and he went to buy some tickets to find out that the only tickets that were available, because it was a Liverpool game, were behind the goal. And to be fair to him, he did have some good knowledge on this. And he said, no, it's far too dangerous to be standing behind the goal. And back then, it obviously was from what happened later in '89. So we got told that there was no tickets left, only the ones behind the goal. My dad refused to take me behind the goal as a 6, 7-year-old kid. He said, "Doesn't matter. I can go and see my friend Stan Flashman." Now, Stan Flashman back in the day was the best known ticket tout in the country. And it was almost like an honour to go and be able to buy a ticket from Stan Flashman, who actually later went on to own Barnet. So he took me to see Stan Flashman, and he made a couple of errors in negotiating. The first one, he said, Stan, was, "Oh, it's my son's first ever trip to Arsenal and we can't get a ticket. So can you help?" Now, with supply and demand, and my father making it very obvious that there was a massive demand that we needed those tickets, Stan came up with the most ludicrous price. At which point, my dad made his second mistake, turned around to me and said, "Don't worry, we'll wait till the game starts, and then Stan will have to lower his prices." Now, Stan, obviously, when he heard my dad say this, couldn't possibly lower his prices. So my first ever experience of going to Arsenal was a 6-year-old child stood outside the East Stand, listening to the crowd for a whole half of the game, not being allowed in because Stan refused to drop his prices. My dad refused to pay. So I never actually got to go to the game. So I think that's probably where my fascination comes in. That as a child, they say that childhood experiences sort of play on you for the rest of your life. Is that because I couldn't get in, it was something
Yeah.
that I always wanted. So now one of my biggest sort of fears is to miss an Arsenal game. So
Yeah.
that's how it started back in 1976.
Wow, that's amazing. I always love hearing about people's stories because I think everyone's is so different. Like for me, I live near, I'm like up north, so I live sort of near Liverpool in a way, and my family are Liverpool fans, and I'm like the only Arsenal fan. So it's yeah, it's I think it's nice to support a different team from everyone else. But for me, like growing up, Wenger was like my hero. But I also felt like I supported Arsenal in such a bad time because
Okay,
we went downhill. Like I supported Arsenal about 2015, and then do you know what,
okay.
there were good memories, there were good things, but then it went sort of downhill. People wanted him to leave, and then now it's nice to be in a place where we're sort of back where we should be. Um, but yeah, like for you, which player did you like growing up?
Um, my first kind of crush on an Arsenal player, as it were, the one I was fascinated with. I look back now, and it was more of kind of my mentality at the time was Charlie Nicholas, because he was the big star. He'd come down from Scotland. He was a
Yeah,
striker, and I always think it's far more exciting to kind of, you gravitate towards the strikers because the strikers are the ones that are the glory ones, and you don't really appreciate the rest of the team. So whereas my father was a fan at the time of Paul Davis,
yeah,
um, who I didn't really notice much at the time. Now I'm actually friends with him. It's great. It's amazing to be kind of friends with these legends. But I like Charlie Nichols. He was the star boy at the time, but he didn't really deserve the star status. Not like Saka today.
mm,
He he was a bit of a, they called him Champagne Charlie, and he was a playboy off the pitch, and he didn't really, for his skill levels, he never really maximised his potential. But at that time, if you scored a goal, and especially he scored against Tottenham, and he was a glory boy. And then my dad took me to watch Arsenal play at Forest. I think it was probably back in the early '80s, and we happened to stay in the same hotel as the Arsenal team, and I was just so excited that I was like going to meet the Arsenal players. And I saw the Arsenal players that they were ready to get on the coach, and they were in the lobby of the hotel, and I went running up to Charlie. So, I mean, back in those days, you didn't have selfies. You got autographs. I went running up to Charlie. I said, "Oh,
yeah.
can I have your autograph? Can I have your autograph? I love you, Charlie." And he kind of looked down at me, and he just didn't really say anything. He just sort of brushed me aside and carried on walking. I was absolutely crushed.
I'd be so
And then
embarrassed.
it was just, I was crushed, absolutely crushed at the time. And then there was another striker that played alongside him called Tony Woodcock. And Tony Woodcock came up to me and said, "Oh, you know, I know I'm not as important as Charlie, but I'll give you my autograph." And Tony Woodcock gave me
Oh.
his autograph, and then he became my favourite. I didn't like Charlie Nicholas anymore after that, so call me
Yeah, I
Chris.
don't think you can get over that really. That sort of thing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
So who was your favourite player when you were growing up?
Well, I'm gonna say Sanchez,
Yeah,
because I watched him for many years, and I remember when he left, it really crushed me a lot, especially the fact it was to United. But I think looking back, I think I'll always have that love for him, even though he went to a team. I mean, he didn't do well, which makes it better. Makes makes it like
and at 450,000 a week, that
yeah. Yeah, but do you know what? Like when people say to me about my favorite player of all time, I do love Rocky. I think I love Rocky more because like now because I think when I started supporting Arsenal, there were players that love playing for Arsenal, and sometimes we sort of lack that heart and that fight on the pitch. And I think with Rocky, you always knew he loved Arsenal, and Arsenal meant a lot to him. And obviously, he was a very good player as well. So I think Sanchez would probably be my classed as my childhood hero, but I think Rocky would probably be my favorite maybe, but it's so tough because we've had so many amazing players.
Yeah, that's very mature that your favourite player is one that you didn't actually get to see in the flesh.
Yeah, it's a bit like sometimes I just wish I could just be a bit older and go back in time and watch him at Highbury, but yeah, Sanchez will always be sort of like my childhood hero, but I think Rocky will probably like my favorite player of all time probably would be him. But we've had so many amazing players. I just feel sad that I never got to meet him or thank him for what he did for us. But it's just a shame that I'm too young to have witnessed all of that. But
Yeah, and if you look back at all the games you've been to or watched or know about, what
yeah.
was your favourite game?
Oh, that's a tough one. Do you know what? I'm very much like I absolutely love Wenger. So I think when we won the FA Cup against Chelsea, I don't remember what year it was. It might have been 2017 or we beat Chelsea 2-1, and I
Yeah,
think yeah, that's
yeah,
got to be mine. But yeah, it's a tough one. But I loved it when we actually won the FA Cup with Arteta because I think I just didn't think we would win it. We did. So
yeah.
yeah,
I have to say that if you look back at both those games, it was 2017
mm,
when I was under Wenger and he won the FA Cup against Chelsea. We really weren't expected to
yeah,
win that because Chelsea had just won the championship and they were going to steamroller Arsenal. It was just a case of how many. That was one of our
yeah,
lowest ebbs. And who was the centre half we had? The name escapes me. That he came from. I think he came. Did he come from Stoke? Not Stoke, but he went on to. Oh, what's the centre half? He went last season, and
yeah.
he
My
hurt
mind's
his.
blank. Yeah,
Yeah, he played an absolute blinder. About the only game, and he kept Drogba in his pocket. It was, or
yeah.
it wasn't Drogba, it was Diego Costa.
Was it Rob Holding?
Rob Holding.
Yeah, I
Rob
remember that.
Holding.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was brilliant 'cause it was unexpected, and that's what kind of football's all about. Is sometimes during the Invincibles, it wasn't as exciting as you'd think it would be because we'd be 3, 4 goals up within 20 minutes, and it was almost like a procession. The most
yeah,
exciting times when you look back at football is when you weren't expecting it and things happen right at the end, or it's just been a surprise. We overturn teams, but being as good as we are now, we go into pretty much every game as favourites.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for you as well, I'd love to know as well, like what your favourite game was, because I know yours would be different to mine.
Yeah, well, mine is very much close to your home, and it dates
Yeah,
to 1989, and I'd actually been thrown out of school about 3 months before my A levels, and my parents managed to negotiate with the school that I'd be allowed back just to take my A levels. And I actually left an A level 45 minutes early so I could get to Highbury to get on a coach to go to Anfield. And my dad went mental, absolutely mental. And I couldn't understand why, because I said, look, in my lifetime, I'm 17 now. I said that I've never been to a game where Arsenal had a chance to win the league in 17 years of me, and I was nearly 18 at the time in '89. Um, but if I fail my A levels, it's easy. I can just retake in November. But
yeah,
this game isn't going to be replayed. This is a
yeah,
once in a lifetime opportunity. And I have to say, it was probably one of the better decisions I ever made in life to go to that game because it absolutely inspired me for the rest of my life to have gone to that game and witnessed what I witnessed. It was just amazing, an amazing, amazing experience. And since then, I've had every respect for Liverpool as a football club and their fans
yeah.
because it was just brilliant. I mean, I heard stories that some Arsenal fans were attacked outside, but I don't believe that at
Mm.
all. What I saw that night, everyone was just so sporting. It was just brilliant.
Do you know what? I thought you would say that because for me, I watched like the documentary back, and it always gives me goosebumps because we sort of weren't expected to win, but it was the fact we just did it right at the end. Like it
Yeah,
must have been funny as players when you've scored that second goal, you've got to sort of keep your nerves in, calm down because the game is still not finished yet. But yeah, do you know what? Even though like I probably would prefer Wenger to George Graham. I think that game for me would go down as one of my favourites. Like,
yeah,
it would have been I'd have loved to experience that, but Highbury just felt so special. I mean, the Emirates I've been to plenty of times, and I think now at the Emirates it's a great atmosphere, but I think Highbury was just sort of made differently.
yeah. It was made back in the. I think Arsenal
Yeah,
moved there in 1913. Um,
yeah,
so, and its heyday was sort of in the 30s when they finished the two Art Deco stands at the east and west. But it was different. But
yeah,
unfortunately, life goes on, and
yeah,
we would never have been able to compete if we'd stayed at Highbury. I mean, we can't get enough people in at the Emirates 60,000 seater stadium. So
yeah,
Highbury at the end was only 38,000, and back then broadcast revenues were less important. and it was a lot to do with gate money and all the periphery. So getting people into the stadium is key to your success and being able to have a successful team. So I
Yeah.
I do miss it, but we were landlocked. There was no way you couldn't knock down the two stands. There's housing on either side. You just couldn't expand it. So practically, it wasn't viable to keep there. Did you ever get a chance to go to Highbury?
No, I would have loved to have gone. I absolutely like when everyone talks about it, it just sounds like such an incredible place. But yeah, it's weird because all I've known is the Emirates, so I couldn't ever compare it. But I think they're both just different. But I think now, like you said, the Emirates is very big, and I think as well as fans, we've just so many Arsenal fans like around the world, and but yeah, I do love the Emirates, I think. I mean, I last went last season for a game, and I just feel like the atmosphere now compared to a game that I went to a few years ago is so different. Like, it's really nice to see that togetherness around the team and Arteta as well. I mean, I want to get your thoughts on Arteta because I want to know what you sort of think of him because when he first came to now, it's been a big journey, like, for him, and yeah, what do you, like, think of him? Do you think he can win us a league?
With the answer at the end is a yes. So when he first arrived, I wanted to give him a chance because I'm
Yeah,
very much in favour of people that can come across eloquently and with passion. And although he didn't have any experience as a manager from his first interview, I was impressed. And he had which probably saved his job. He won that FA Cup in the first
yeah,
few months, and he took over Arsenal at a real low, a massive low. I mean, since I'd been going, I mean, when I was going in the 70s, then Arsenal were poor, but I'd never experienced anything else other than it being poor. When George Graham arrived, it got better and better, and then we had a little bit of a lull, and then Wenger took over, and for the first 10, 11 years of Wenger, it was just unbelievable.
yeah,
In the second half of Wenger's career, although we did win a few FA Cups, everything in between became it was a gradual spiral down. But it
yeah,
wasn't that we weren't any good. It was just our expectations had been so much and so high that it was very difficult to maintain. And the club had really lost its way. I thought that although I did love Wenger, I think he should have gone. There
mm,
was numerous occasions where he could have gone with his head held high, and I think he held on for too long. And I understand why, because if I was him, I wouldn't have wanted to leave. And the management and ownership at the time were disjointed because of the ownership issues. The Cronkies didn't own 100% of the club, and and things were really spiraling downwards. And by the time he left, it was, it really was time to go. Emery comes on board, and initially there was favourable signs, but for whatever reason, that wasn't working out at all. And when Arteta arrived, I think he found the club, for me, in its lowest position since the 1970s when I first started watching Arsenal. And I thought the club probably Arteta wouldn't have been their first choice.
yeah,
However, as soon as he gave his first press conference, I had faith in him. And when I saw the team playing a way that, yeah, they were playing a method type football. He didn't just suddenly make them great. What he did, he kind of devised a plan to beat the best teams. Which, if you look at that run to the final, I think we beat Man City in the semi-final, and then we beat Chelsea in the final. Two teams that were better than us. There's no way else to describe it. Those two teams were better than us, and the fact that he had the tactical nous to be able to beat both of those teams, I was impressed with. Now, after that, the following season during COVID, then things went downhill for him. I think we had our worst run of games since the 70s. And I think by November of the following season, I think if it wasn't for COVID and the fact that
mm,
there were no crowds there, he may well have lost his job, but he didn't. And he gradually turned it around. And I did an interview towards the end of the following season where it was kind of misquoted, but the quote was that I likened him to Ferguson. And I didn't
yeah,
at all. What I said was, if you look at what Ferguson did, his first 4 or 5 years at United, he didn't achieve anything. It actually got worse before it got better. And if you want to end up being a club like Tottenham, where every 5 seconds you just sack the manager and you start the process again, then that's what you're going to get. So you have to actually give him time. And I said, if you give him time, then he could end up being like Ferguson, as successful as Ferguson. I never likened him at the time to Ferguson. I just said, you've got to give
Mm.
him time. And I felt that I'd seen enough of him in that first season that he'd been, I think he arrived in December time. But by the following November, December, he'd been there 12 months. I'd seen enough of him to want to give him an opportunity to carry on. And he talked about this process and the way that he put the teams together. He was looking at youth, and it reminded me very much of what George Graham had done, because George Graham came in similar circumstances and built a team around youth and desire. And also George Graham got rid of Charlie Nicholas, which I look back on now as being a good move, because he
Mm.
wanted the superstars out. He wanted one great team, not sort of these superstar players. And Arteta had a similar job with Ozil, who I felt was a kind of like Charlie Nicholas type character, in
Yeah.
as much as he had the skills, but he wasn't prepared to put the work rate in. And I think that's just disgraceful in life, that
Mm.
people with skills that lack effort, that's the biggest waste you can have. You can have people that aren't skilled and you can't achieve, fine. We've all got natural abilities or non-natural abilities. But the fact that Ozil did not put the effort in, and then Arteta was prepared to get rid of him, I had most respect for.
Yeah, with Özil, I think, like you said, he was an incredible footballer, but I think sometimes, people describe him as a bit lazy on the pitch, and I couldn't argue that sometimes because I don't think he worked his socks off. Maybe like Smith Rowe, like when Smith Rowe was here, and Smith Rowe, Saka, like they really worked their socks off. But Özil sometimes was very good, and then sometimes you could see he wasn't really putting the work in. But I agree with like Arteta. It's been a journey. Like when he first came, I wouldn't say I didn't want him, but he's not someone that I would choose to have. But then I honestly wanted to see how it would go, and what he was saying, it really felt like it was he was saying all the right things. And then I think fans hate to be patient and to give things time. Um, it was very hard, really, because Arteta was left with a bit of a mess, and I think he did need time to bring his own players in to, do that. But I think it's nice to see now that he's actually come this far. It's for me as a fan, I've never seen us win the league, and it's very difficult because each season I'm trying to stay hopeful that we're going to do it. Um, and obviously this season, obviously we've played Wolves, we've played Villa, and I'm a fan that takes it game by game. Like I don't get carried away until we've actually won something. Like I just can't. I get too hopeful about things and it doesn't happen. So it's obviously tough, but at this moment in time with the transfer window, it does shut tonight, but we've obviously brought Marino in, and he's obviously got an injury. I'm just pretty upset about that. But it's a few weeks. But I think the problem is, like, on the next few weeks, you look at some games we have coming up, but I think Partey at the moment, I think he's okay if he's not going to pick up an injury. But we've also Calafiori's here as well. I know there's a lot of outgoings, players that have left. But I just wanted to sort of get your thoughts. Like, do you think we've done enough in a transfer window to win the league? I know it's not ended yet. Things could change in the next few hours.
Yeah, I think you need to look at this transfer window in relation to the ones that have gone before it. And it's not like when Arteta first came in that there was drastic surgery needed. I mean, we basically had, in my view, 8, 9 players that needed to be shipped out of the club and then bring in replacements. I think what he's done over the last transfer window is that he's brought in not only a fantastic first 11, but a really good squad as well. So people
Yeah.
that say, "Oh, we've only signed, two." Well, technically we've signed three because of the
Mm.
goalkeeper. But let's call it two with Calafiori and Marino. Is fine. We've only signed two, but then we didn't need that many. We've already spent
Mm.
hundreds of millions of pounds over the last few years building up this squad to be able to compete. Now, what we have done, we've shipped out players and that we can say that we miss Smith Rowe and Nketiah, but and even Vieira and Ramsdale, who's literally just gone in the last hour. But the reality was, none of the players that we've shipped out would weaken our team or really weaken our squad because
Yeah.
they just weren't used. We didn't need them, so it could literally be you or I sat on the bench and not be used. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So if you can ship them out and get money in, then great. So the players that we've brought in, Mourinho and Calafiori, really they are players that can definitely improve our squad and come in and definitely do a job. And I think, especially with
Yeah.
Mourinho, there's probably a place for him when he gets over his injury. Let's hope it's nothing too serious. When I read the word fracture in a shoulder in the same sentence from Arteta, you've got to worry that that's not going to be a few weeks. You know, I've got personal experience of a shoulder issue this year, and it does take a long time to heal. So if you look at those two players, they're definitely an improvement. Now there's two other aspects to this: is that our team is young and they're a year better off. You've got players like Namweri now coming through that you can consider to be in the first, especially after the what we saw during the summer. You would consider him to be part of the first team squad. So I think overall we have improved our squad. We're in a better position now. I think the Arsenal of this season is better than the Arsenal of last season. So in that respect,
Mm.
it's been a successful window. The other side of it is there is a financial aspect to this. You do have to balance the books, and you've gone some way to redress the balance. Some way. We haven't made massive profits this transfer window if we don't sell anyone else, but at least we haven't spent massive amounts either. We're not in deficit like we have been the last few windows. Now, the only position that I would think that we're kind of lacking in is on the right side of our attack with Saka. Is that Saka's a great player, and you'd probably have him as your first choice. But for whatever reason, he doesn't rate Reece Nelson. So Reece Nelson's not getting many minutes. So you haven't really got any cover for Saka. So what you're seeing is a Saka that's probably not the best Saka you can have every game because he's not replacing him. He's just playing him through. He's playing him through the odd niggle. If he's out of form, he's still playing him. He's just not giving him a break. And I think overall for Saka, that's not going to be good. So if you can bring in what he would consider to be a viable alternative to Saka that can get more game time than Reece, then I'd want to see that position filled.
Yeah, I think I mean, like, with, so far the window, I feel like near the midfield sort of getting sorted, and I think Calafiori, I know Timber's sort of playing at the moment, but I feel quite comfortable with that position right now. But I think, like, I don't feel massively disappointed. I just think I was hoping for maybe a few more positions to be sorted. I mean, I think when I've been watching us, especially against Wolves, I felt like maybe having a striker would help. Um, Havertz for me, I think he's going to have a good season. I do expect him to score more goals than he did last season. We will get goals from other players around the pitch. I mean, I know Martinelli at the moment is struggling with his confidence, but I do think hopefully in time that'll come and Trossard can give us those goals as well. I mean, yeah, I think we'll do okay this season. I think obviously injuries is a big factor, but I think with Saka, like you mentioned, he's obviously had a good start to the season, but he can look a bit burnt out sometimes, and it'd be good to have that rotation. I mean, you mentioned about Reece Nelson. It's interesting one because I like Reece Nelson. I think he's a good player, but if Saka was injured and he came in, I don't feel like he could fill Saka's boots or do as good as Saka. Um, I mean, I think he's a good player, but we've not really seen a lot of Reece Nelson recently. But yeah, it's a tough one. But I think with like the players that have left, I mean, we saw like an hour ago Ramsdale's left, and I wanted to sort of get your thoughts on that because, like you said, he's not played much at all. He's only played in the odd cup game or whenever Raya's had a rest, and I think for me it's the right thing to do. But it's also kind of sad it didn't work out in a way because I didn't really expect it to go how it's gone, how it's ended. But I think for him, it's obviously hopefully one day for England he could maybe be that number one, but I think it's for me, it feels like the right thing for his career.
Yeah, I mean, you said that it didn't work out for him, but he still had two very good seasons, didn't he, with
Yeah.
Arsenal? And if I could have two very good seasons playing for Arsenal, then for me, I would consider that to be working out. The the fact that Ramsdale's gone is a reflection on how good Arsenal now are, because Ramsdale upped the levels and he played really well. Now, people don't particularly like change, and
Yeah.
Ramsdale's personality, he definitely connected with the crowd in a way that Raya maybe up to this point hasn't, with his personality. His father, we'd always see his father at games. He was always, he was just like another fan, drinking with the fans. And you could tell that the whole family was able to assimilate and connect with the fan base very, very easily. And that is going to be missed. But, if you look at the stats, then the reality is that Raya is is a better goalkeeper than Ramsdale. And if you
Mhm.
want to up the levels and if you want to compete, you've got to be pretty ruthless. And it is a shame in one sense, but this isn't
Mm.
Sunday League football. This is Arsenal at the highest level of professional football you can get. And it's probably something that could be, it's really, I think, what did Arteta use the expression that there's fine margins,
Mm.
and it is fine margins. And, Ramsdale was great, but Raya appears a little bit greater, and those fine margins could be the difference. But from a personal perspective, I heard an interesting story from Perry Groves, and he said that in in the professional football, it's different from kind of what's like normal day life. Is that you can share a changing room with someone from an early age. They can be sat next to you in the changing rooms for 10 years, and then the next day there's an empty peg, and he always referred to it as the empty peg. And it's just the way that football is that
Mhm.
you've been colleagues with someone, friends with someone for 10 years, and then within a few hours they're shipping their stuff out in a little box, and all that there is to remember them is an empty peg. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it is a shame, but I'm sure if at the end of this season we end up with the league championship, we'll all get over it.
Yeah, I think it doesn't surprise me that it's happened, and I think I feel more happy for him, and I think for the club, I think it's just an overall the right thing. But like you said, I think it's about fine margins as well. You've got because we're getting so close to beating Man City with the league, like last season as well. There was so many different things we could have done differently, but I think with the goalkeeper situation, I think Raya has shown. I mean, this season so far, he has been absolutely incredible, and
So that goal in.
ah, honestly, it's so nice to see him grow in confidence because I know when he first came, I think he struggled a little bit with that. And I think when you're at Brentford and when you're at Arsenal, it's it's a lot different. You know, Arsenal are supposed to challenge for things, win a lot, and I think for me, it's nice to see with Raya having that confidence back. But I do agree. I do think he's better than Ramsdale. But I think they're both sort of different goalkeepers. But yeah, it's going to be nice to see Ramsdale hopefully do really well for himself. But yeah, I do feel quite happy for him. I feel more happy for him than sad really because I think as a lot of us expected it to happen. We sort of heard the rumours recently. So yeah, I feel happy, and I think with sort of Smith Rowe and Nketiah going, I think it's obviously sad to see them go, but the right thing with Nketiah, I don't feel massively sad because he didn't really play much, and I feel like we know he gave us a good service to the club, but we knew it was coming to an end. Arteta stopped playing him for a little bit, but yeah, I feel quite content so far with things. I think it would be nice if we brought a striker in, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, we'll know in about what time
Yeah,
does the window finish? Is it midnight or 11 or
yeah, I
10?
think it's 11, so we'll probably know in a few hours. But
Yeah.
I
So
think, yeah, I think we know our team right now is very good, and I feel like it's just these fine margins that we've got to get over. And I think us beating Villa is a good step for that because that's a game we struggled last season, and I think we've just got to improve these little things. So I really hope we can win the league this season. Fingers crossed. But Julian, thank you so much for coming on today.
okay.
I really enjoyed this. I really appreciate you coming
I
on.
did as well. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you
you're
for your
very
time.
welcome. Yeah, it's been really good to chat with you, and to those that will be watching this back, I hope you did enjoy this. And please don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.